So we are on Matthew 8 to 10. Um, and at the end of Matthew 7, that was the end of the Sermon on the Mount. The people were amazed because he was teaching with one who had authority and not like the scribes. So if you remember finishing that last one, it was sort of like hey, by the way, the scribes they always talk about how you build on this one and they reference this guy and whatever. And Jesus is coming in like he's laying down, this is the way it's supposed to be based on the law, on the scriptures. The Torah is what they mean when they say the law, right? So, sorry. We are now moving into this whole section where he goes off, basically improves that, right? So, chapters 8 and 9, there's these sort of 9 stories or so, depending on how you want to break it up. Most people look at it as 9, where God is sort of demonstrating that authority, and it's got a strong emphasis on faith, right? So the faith of the people that he's interacting with is critical. You'll see in these first couple in particular, where he chooses to heal them, and it is by his own statements because of their faith, and they have great examples of that, right? So he is basically coming in, introducing the kingdom to the world, right? So you just basically relatively newly started this ministry, goes up, does a Sermon on the Mount like Moses, and now he's walking down into the crowd. And these 3 are the first 3 interactions that he has. So I won't spend a ton of time on everyone and read everything through. I like personally, particularly the centurion story, where we talk about faith, right? So Jewish law would generally, if you're strict, would ban Jesus actually from going into a Gentile home, particularly a centurion, right? So the centurion comes and has this just amazing faith and understanding of saying, look, I'm not worthy to have you come onto my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. That's where it is right here. Verse 9, for I too am a man under authority, having soldiers under my command. And I say, hey, go do this. And he goes. And I say, come, and he comes. So I believe that you're Jesus. So you don't really need to come to my house. You just say it's healed. And I have faith that that is going to be the truth, right? And Jesus is like, yes, that's it, right? We talk about this at church a lot. Like, you're supposed to be making Jesus Lord over your life. And this guy comes in and he's just like, yes, I know, I get it. And that's it, right? And Jesus is sort of saying, my own people. That's this last paragraph here in this section, verse 10. He's like, he's amazed. And he says, I haven't found anyone in Israel with so great a faith. And I tell you, many will come to the banquet with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the sons of the kingdom, meaning Jews, his chosen people up to that point, will be thrown into the outer darkness, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And he tells the centurion, go, right? Let it be done for you. And he was healed at that moment. So you have these 3 stories. All 3 of them have sort of this faith piece, but in particular, that one is interesting to me. So in between these stories are actually in sort of 3 sets of 3, and in between there's this little interlude about Christ's followers or following Jesus. So the first one is the cost of following Jesus, and Jesus seems unnaturally harsh in this, and part of that is, yes, true. There is a strong and holy side to Jesus, but another one is also not understanding the context of life back then. So basically, Jesus is walking away, and a scribe comes to him and says, "Teacher, I'll follow you wherever you go." And Jesus tells him, basically, I'm going to be on the road. And one of his other disciples says, "Lord, first let me go bury my father." And Jesus says, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead," which is where I said it sounds kind of harsh. But a part of that is that in Israel, Jewish burial at that time could be a year-long process. At least 6 months. And basically what they do is they sort of have a first burial and then a second. And the first burial, they bury them. And basically, as I understand it, I'm not like an expert on this stuff, but as I understand these things, it's to sort of let the flesh come off. And then they go and bury the bones again. So, but it is a common practice that this could take a year. And at that time, this was the honor your father and mother was sort of placed in very high regard by the Pharisees of that time. So this burial thing was looked at as like the peak of the pyramid. This was the most important thing, is giving your parents the proper burial. So this person is saying, let me go bury my father. You're sort of thinking, well, he's just going to go and bury his father tomorrow. And Jesus says, no way, too bad for you. What he's probably meaning is, I'm going to be here for a year because my father died and these are 6 months or whatever, because I got to do this fancy burial to make sure he gets the bones and whatever. And Jesus is sort of saying, well, you know, that's all well and good, but that's not really the priority right now, is to make sure you get a second burial with the bones or whatever it is, right? So it's probably not as harsh as we might read it in today's understanding or expectations of how burials work and what we think of Jesus. So then you get three more miracles or stories. And one of the probably more famous ones is this second one here, where Jesus comes across two possessed men. And I won't pretend to say that I understand every aspect of it, but as you're reading it, you might be thinking, what is this anyway? So some keynotes. First one is Jesus walks up to them and immediately the demons recognize Jesus, right? So they say, what do you have to do with us, Son of God? Right? Have you come here to torment us before the time? So not only do they know it's Jesus, not only do they know it's the Son of God, but also they're sort of saying, hey, by the way, are you coming us to torment us before when we're supposed to get tormented? Right. So they know the end of the story. Like this whole process is like clearly they recognize what's going on. They recognize Jesus. And that was an interesting story. So, and then it says, a long way off from them is a herd of pigs feeding. If you drive us out, the demons beg, send us into the herd of pigs. So there's a couple of aspects to this. One is pigs are unclean animals, right? So those would not have been Jewish herders, obviously. So this is Gentiles that are herding in this area. So some people believe that Jesus allowed this to happen and the demons drove them into that. Some people believe that Jesus expected this and that this was a consequence for the demons, that they were driven into the sea. So I don't know that anybody has a full story of exactly how that happens, but if you know anything about Jesus in the Bible, he does know the big picture, right? I was just listening to an excellent example on that. But that's a side trail I won't go down right now. The neat thing right here is the people that saw this, right? They went into the city and reported everything, right? Not especially what had happened to the pigs, but especially what had happened to those who were demon possessed, right? And at that, the whole town went out to meet Jesus. So these people go back and they're like, these guys healed this guy, Jesus, healed these two demon possessed men. It was amazing, right? And then when they go out there, when they saw them, they begged him to leave. So this was interesting because you're going to see, particularly at the end of this chapter, we're going to see actually, there's a very concerted effort in the Gospels, and then actually again in Acts, it's repeated in the way it goes, is that God's ministry goes out to Israel first, right? It goes out to the Jews first, and then to the Gentile, right? And it's a very specific process and pattern. You can see it all through as you're reading. So this is actually a sort of the times that he meets someone that's a Gentile, like the centurion there. Those actually are more unique stories, and usually Jesus points them out like he did there, right? He was sort of like, look, this guy, he has faith as a Gentile, even when you don't, right? So it's specifically pointed out because at this point, his mission really is for Israel. So this is a Gentile town that this is happening in, and the Gentiles reject him, basically. They're sort of uninterested in seeing more of these miracles. So it's a very interesting story, no matter what, right? So then last one is when some of the scribes talk to Jesus and they're sort of like, whoa, he can't forgive sins. And I use this example as when I talked about it before, is like, that would be me. I work at the college, me walking on and basically saying, walking on campus and saying, hey, your student loans are forgiven. Your student loans are forgiven. Although that actually seems to be a common thing nowadays. But like, I don't have the authority to walk onto my campus and just start forgiving student loans, right? So that's what these people are thinking. Like, who is this guy, Jesus, that just walks in and thinks he can forgive sins? Like, who gives you that authority? And Jesus makes the obvious point of, I just healed this guy right here who could never walk. He's paralytic, right? Which one's harder, to forgive sins or to perform a miracle right before your eyes? So it's pretty impressive, right? So you got those second three, and then there's another sort of midsection here on the calling of Matthew. So, which is a great little story. I won't go through all the time of it, but it's pretty neat. And then talking a little bit about fasting after that. So why don't your disciples fast? And basically, Jesus is like, hey, while I'm here, why are people going to get sad and put ashes on their face and fast? Trust me, there'll be time for fasting in the future, and when that happens. So. Then it moves to the last three stories that go through 7, 8, 9. One is the daughter that had just died, two blind men, and driving out another demon. You'll see at the end of this third one, he drives out demons by the ruler of demons. And Jesus really doesn't actually answer that one so much here. But what he does do is he answers that in like a couple chapters, 12, 13 maybe. That comes up again, and he talks to it at some length. So you will get that answer at some point. And then this is the end of it, right? So this next block of teaching. So this is his second large block of teaching. He comes around and he says, wow, there's a lot of harvest. So we need to send people out. So he summons his 12 disciples, right? So this is where I say, what's going on here is he's bringing the kingdom to Israel first, right? And that is mirrored later on, but you'll see later the mission goes out to the Gentiles. But right now, what he's saying is he's really focused his mission on Israel, and he's sending out his disciples to Israel. And he's saying, hey, by the way, go out to all of Israel and don't take the road that leads to the Gentiles. That's in verse 5. And don't enter any Samaritan town. Instead, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim the kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, drive out demons, right? Freely received, freely given. So he is introducing the kingdom here. He's actually sort of breaking that curse and trying to fight back against the evil that has come into this creation, right? The evil that has ruined the good that was meant to have been in place. And this is him fighting back against it. He's saying, look, go out there, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, drive out demons, all the things that are causing the evil in this world, or the aspects of evil in this world, start turning those things over and turning it around, because there is a new king in town. Right. And in this case, he says, you don't need to bring anything with you. Just rely on God. And you're also, to a certain extent, you're dealing with Jews, and you're going to be close by when you're doing that as well. So he says, just go out, trust God. But he then, in verse 16, says, look, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Right. So understand, these people aren't going to take this message happily. Therefore, be shrewd as serpents, innocent as doves. Beware of them, because they'll hand you over to local courts and flog you in their synagogues. You'll even be brought before governors and kings because of me, to bear witness to them and the Gentiles. Right? But when they do hand you over, don't worry about how you're to speak. You'll be given what to say in that hour, because it isn't you speaking, it's the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. So this is like a precursor. This is all the way back in chapter 10, where of all of the things that are going to go on for these disciples all the way through the end of Acts, right? This is a pretty big theme of Acts, is them going out, speaking to people, facing the persecution, the Spirit coming on them as they minister to thousands and all kinds of people being converted. So that is the whole story that's going to unfold for a long time, not just this little trip right here. So the there's some excellent verses at the end as well. Therefore, don't be afraid of them. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the light. What you hear in a whisper, proclaim on the housetops. Don't fear those who kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. Rather, fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Right? And then verse 32. Therefore, everyone who will acknowledge me before others, I will acknowledge him before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I will deny him before my Father in heaven. Don't assume I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. Right? So this is, we actually just gave a message a little while ago about the Prince of Peace, right? That's who Jesus is. And you're sort of like, oh, wait a second. He's the Prince of Peace, coming to bring peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. And here he says, don't think I came to bring peace. But this meaning what he's saying, I'm not coming here to solve conflict. And that's not what he means when he says he's going to bring peace, right? He's coming to bring reconciliation with God. And that reconciliation with God is me. You're going to be on God's side. And Jesus is actually pretty stark about this. Like, there are only two sides. You are either on my side or the other side. So he just had that teaching, right? You can only serve one master. It's either me or it's mammon in that case, right? But the same is true. He says that many times. He's like, you are either a daughter or a son of God, or you are a son or daughter of the evil one. That's the way he draws the line. So because of that, it is going to turn man against his father, daughter against mother, daughter-in-law against daughter-in-law, et cetera, right? And you need to have an ordered love that puts Jesus as the Lord of your life first, before you have these secondary loves that are wonderful, necessary, created, part of his order and good, but at the same time, they have to be put in an order, in priority, right? And those things come after God. So you enjoy all of those things that are on earth, the amazing stuff like being married and having kids and beautiful houses and even good food and all of those things. Those things are meant to be enjoyed, but they're meant to be enjoyed underneath the authority of God. Right? So we enjoy God through his creation, as opposed to trying to use God for our own pursuits. Which is a great quote that we just shared a little while ago. And I love that one. So that is it for Matthew 8 to 10. Hope you enjoyed reading, and we'll see you at church.